Beautiful.
Well, we're entering the world of Gustav Mahler, and my father told me when he was 13 years old, a gentleman came for lunch who said, "Today Gustav Mahler died." This was in 1911. My father was 13. "Today Gustav Mahler died. Mark my words," he said. "He will be considered as great as Beethoven and Brahms and Schubert and Mozart." And my father, who was 13, thought, no, that's not possible. He's a modern composer. But in fact, I think we all agree that that's happened around the world. And some people say that he's the most popular composer of the day. So we're entering a world that, for many of us, is very familiar and very important. And I want to approach it in a little bit unusual way, this world of Mahler's sound. And I want to begin with a very unusual thing, which is not with an orchestral piece, but I want you to hear and listen to the sound of a piece which my teacher, Gaspar Cassadó, recorded in 1929 on the cello. He is a very, very great cellist, one of the greatest cellists who ever lived. And in this 4-minute piece, you can hear a very unusual way of playing, today very unusual. A different sound, a different timing, different way of getting from note to note, vibrato, trills, everything is unusual. And it's a time gone by. It's a kind of playing that's gone by. We know it from Chrysler and from some other string players, Salmon and others of that time. But this is a particularly beautiful example. And I want to tell you that it was recorded in 1929, the beginning days of recording, gut strings, totally different setup of the instrument than is today. And what I'd like you to do, if you would be so kind, is to shut your eyes while you're listening, I mean, if you want to, and imagine yourself back in that time, 1920s in Europe, with the cello sound that we virtually never hear today, almost not at all. And absorb the timing and the atmosphere and the intimacy of the sound, the character that he brings. And then when it's over, we'll move from there into the world of Gustav Mahler. So this is Gaspar Cassadó playing the intermezzo of Chopin in E flat. Oh, he got it all.
Yeah.
Well, we have to come back from a different world in order to hear that. It's a different way of experiencing music, and I think it's not Mahler's time, but it's not far after. And the orchestras of those days made a sound closer to that than they did to the sound of the modern, brawny, muscly, powerful orchestra of today. So that's the first thing we have to do in order to get into that world. And you notice the portamentos, an enormous number of slides, very beautifully done. So I started off that way. That's how I started my life with that man. I was 15 years old, and I spent 5 years with him, studying and traveling and being with him, really a tremendous amount. And that formed my musical personality. And when I'm conducting, I'm always looking for that sound, searching for that sound. And we have tonight in this group 2 members of the Philharmonic Orchestra, which in my view is, of all the orchestras today, the closest actually to that very intimate, coloured sound. And I've done all my recordings with the Philharmonic Orchestra. For that reason, it's a great joy to have Sam Burston and Samantha Regan here. So I went on then as a cellist and then became a conductor. It's another story how that happened, by surprise. I was a chamber music coach. I was a chamber music player, and I coached a lot. And once I applied for a job to teach chamber music and cello at a summer school, and the lady, after she hired me, she said, "Oh, we're looking for a conductor. Would you please, do you know anybody who could do that?" And I said, "Oh, I'd love to do that." She said, "Are you very experienced?" I said, "Oh, very." Well, of course, at that point I hadn't conducted at all, but we didn't have Google in those days, and so she hired me, and that's how I became a conductor. That's another story. And then I took over a civic orchestra in Boston, wonderful orchestra, the oldest civic orchestra in Boston, and we worked for several years, and we started doing the Mahler symphonies. But the board didn't like Mahler, and particularly when we got to the 9th, that was the last straw. They hated the Mahler, as they called him. They didn't like it. And so they fired me, and the whole orchestra left. Literally all the players came with me. That's where the Boston Philharmonic started, and we started a long love affair. It's now 41 years since that happened, and we've done all the Mahler symphonies, and some of them many, many times. And so all the song cycles and everything, it's become... In fact, one season, our 25th season, we did nothing but Mahler, from the beginning to the end. Everybody, and of course every concert was sold out because everybody was so happy, and so on. So that's the history. And then I started recording all the symphonies with the Philharmonia, and we've got through all of them except for 7 and 8. That's another story, but I want to now just look a little bit into the style. And I sent out to all of you, and maybe you'll get a chance to listen, a class I did on Brahms. Actually, it was on a Brahms trio, the clarinet trio. No, the clarinet sonata, beg your pardon, which was really an exploration of rubato and how rubato works. And you can go back and watch that, but I'm going to give you an example of it and show you another Brahms piece. Actually, it's the violin concerto. And I just came across a recording the other day. Henrik Schering was the violinist, one of the greatest violinists of the world, and the introduction struck me as being the opposite of what I think of as the kind of Mahlerian freedom. So I want just Simon to play the opening, and if you feel the toes in your shoes beating up and down, the toes go up and down, then you know you're in 4/8 notes. we're listening to that, what we're actually experiencing is an andante in 4. So you da, 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 da. What Brahms wrote was an adagio in 2, which is quite a different feeling. So if you do the opening introduction like this, 2, and now. That's the rubato style. By lengthening the first note, we call that an agogic accent, where you pull the first note and then it actually takes you through 2 bars. 1, 2, and then and now again. And when it comes in with the violin, it becomes a 3-bar phrase. And then again with 3-bar phrase. That's the rubato style, where you pull and stretch and elasticize the time to create the feeling of the phrases, to respond to the harmony, to the surprises. And that's the way rubato works. And I explained that at some length in this class, so that you would be prepared for this discussion. The way it works is there's a tempo, in this case, which seems at first faster, but actually is slower, because instead of 4 eighth notes, you're hearing 2 quarters. And even 1 beat over 2 bars, that idea, if you could do that. That's actually 1 slur in Brahms's music over 2 bars. And so that opens up a whole world of expressiveness. I call that 1 buttock playing, because in order to do that, and then the oboe is invited. If the oboist feels that and is an expressive singer, that's what he'll do. And we give him space by that, by conducting it in 2 and feeling it in 1 beat for 2 bars. That's another world. And that's the world into which Mahler stepped as a conductor and, of course, as a composer. And he took over that way of making music. The other thing I sent out to you to look at before, and you can again take a look at it afterwards, is a class I gave on the opening of the Mahler 5th Symphony with the trumpeter, wonderful young Peruvian trumpeter, Elma Charumpi, and we worked on that for I don't know how long, but just on the opening. And what we found there is this strange idea. That timing, the slight rushing, which Mahler asked for, and which he does himself in his own piano playing when he's playing on the piano roll, opens up another kind of playing, a playing which is so free and so elastic and improvised, almost feeling improvised. Da 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 ti, he says, rush with those notes. Rush. He doesn't say how much to rush, but you have to give that feeling. And my own feeling is that that opening should be conducted, not left to the trumpeter, because the trumpeter has to pay attention to playing the trumpet. We have to give the atmosphere, the mood, tell the story, and so I would suggest that belongs to the piece. Anyway, then when you get to the second theme, you have another issue, because so what is that rhythm? Is it da ba ba or is it dum ba ba? It's neither. It's neither exact nor double dotted. What it is over dotted. I call it over dotted because it's somewhere between the two. And incidentally, the little slide there, they would undoubtedly have done that. And they would have done it pianissimo. Overdotting again, screaming in pianissimo because it's soft, but accent. It's that world-weary kind of sound, exhausted, weeping, because that's what. And then very hard to get the trombones to do that because they love to do but it isn't that and the cellos not bomb, but bomb. How do you get that? Well, it's Jewish. It's a Jewish gesture. Mahler was Jewish. He felt it completely naturally. It's a language. He spoke the language without an accent. So do I, because that's a language which we grew up in, which we've heard. We hear it from klezmer. We hear it from all over. That slight off. It's like the Viennese waltz with the second beat coming a little early. You can't really teach it. You have to listen to it. You have to absorb it. You have to hear it. So then you get into this wonderful passage. Oh, here's incredible. Where the cellos come. Oh, I want to show you before because Sam Burstyn is here. There's a solo for viola. And then they join. One of the great moments for violas. And it's very hard to hear it because there's so much going on. You really have to tell the winds to disappear completely and almost pretend to play. And the viola mustn't play too loud because it's marked pianissimo. So touching. And then cellos go and then all the winds. Ta-da, ta-yum, ta-da, ta-yum, ta-da, mit Schwung, like that, and the flute before, da-dee, ta, accent, ta-da-dee. So to get the players to feel this intensity, to feel the importance of their voice, to feel that they're really soloists. It's an orchestra of soloists. The Mahler Orchestra is an orchestra of soloists, and everybody in the orchestra has to feel as though they're given that authority, like storytellers, like people in a play or in an opera, each one in a novel. Each one has his own thing, and I want to show you something amazing here.
Maestro, is it what you call emotional polyphony?
Yeah, well, I'm just about to show that now. This is a magical thing. It begins with a solo not for one cello, but for all the cellos. But they are as one. The timpani plays a B flat, and now the cellos play. Oh, first this one. Almost timeless. And now the second phrase. And they'll be too loud. I promise they'll be too loud. So somehow we have to create the atmosphere of such inward, almost as if it's unbearable, like the prisoners are coming out of, in Fidelio, out of the darkness of the prison, and they can't quite believe the light. Pianissimo, he says, but sempre espressivo. Isn't that beautiful? Sempre pianissimo. Ma espressivo, don't get cold. And now, I can hear Cassadó play. So soft there. Violas. Sempre, still pianissimo, and now. All of that is in. I mean, it's an incredible amount of information that we have to absorb in order to get a cello section to do that as one voice, and it's so incredible, overwhelming, like a Holocaust scene. And so now sets up the most amazing thing. It's unbelievable. The horns play. That's the beautiful funeral theme. And again with them, like in a funeral, the timpani and the cello bass is. At the same time, the oboes go. Cackling and at the same time, but they have nothing to do with each other. And then the cellos, pianissimo, immer am Griffbrett, on the fingerboard. All the way from that's all pianissimo, right? And now at the same time, the solo violin goes with the flute. All these things are happening at the same time. That's what I call emotional polyphony. Counterpoint. Not of voices, which exists, of course, in many composers. There's one great moment in Beethoven's Fifth when there are 7 voices going. But here, everybody's telling a different story. They're all different characters. That's Mahler. That's what we have to bring out, and we have to encourage the players to be as individualistic and as characterful as they possibly can, and really believe what he said. Because the tendency is, if you hear somebody playing, you play louder. No. Like in a drama, like in an opera, right? So that's the secret, I think, of what Mahler is about, emotional counterpoint. How do you conduct that? I don't know, actually. I don't think you can conduct it, because how can you do all these things simultaneously? One of the things you can do is hear all these things simultaneously in your mind, and then as it's unfolding, you can guide different things. Like if the cellos come out, the cellos are over here a little bit too much because they're a little too emotional, you subdue them. And if the oboes are a little bit timid, you make a gesture which gets them to feel the suddenness of that gesture. And if the violin, and the timpani, boom, and the horns. You may find yourself doing something. The one thing you don't do is traffic policeman. Traffic policeman tells people when to come in. This music has to be learnt in the heart. Somebody asked me, how many rehearsals does it take? As many rehearsals as it needs for the people to absorb it, so they know it, they love it, they play it as if it was their own, and they're not looking up anxiously wondering where to come in. Then Mahler doesn't work. So that's the background language. I mean, there's so many more things to say, but I'd like to get going with somebody, and we have a Lorenzo. Lorenzo put forward the idea. Lorenzo, I believe, is from Argentine.
Yes.
And he put forward, I think, the first movement. Is that right?
Yes, correct. Can you hear me well?
Well, great. Terrific. So what would you like to do? You can take any part of the first movement that you're either excited about or troubled by.
Everything, everything is both.
Yeah.
It's an emotional counterpoint within me.
Well, look, here's the thing. We are in a very strange situation. We're talking about, we don't have an instrument, we don't have an orchestra. It's no good playing the piano. Anyway, I can't play the piano because I'm on the piano. So it's a disastrous situation, which we're going to make wonderful. So you're going to conduct some passage, and I'm going to see how you're realizing it.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I'd love to start with the beginning. I'd love to try
great
embodying that I never thought should be conducted before. Now,
well,
clear.
There's an argument about it, because some would say leave the trumpet alone to do it. I think it's part of the piece. The piece starts at the beginning, and the timing and the mood and the atmosphere and the color and the sound, I think has to be. And the only time I did it without conducting it didn't work. Work. So, but I'm sure that Sam and the two Sam Manther and Sam have had experience of conductors doing both. I myself, or even in L'Après-Midi, I feel the same. The piece begins at the beginning. Conductor is responsible for the whole. And when you get to the timpani, for instance, I don't think I've ever seen a conductor put his hands down and not conduct that. It's the same thing, same music. Okay, good, great.
Okay.
Wonderful. You already look as though you're going to do a great job. And that's really, no, I'm serious. That's really important, because you don't look you don't look afraid. You look very excited. You're I always say, one of the members asked, I think it was your friend who's going to Martin, he asked, how should one bring a new Mahler symphony to a place that's never heard it? I said, it's like greeting somebody into heaven and then showing them around. Look at this, look at this. Oh my God, this is so. That's the way to approach this music. It was full out enthusiasm, not with fear, but with total excitement and joy. And that's what you're doing. So I'm very excited to see you conduct.
Thank you. Okay. Ta-ta-ta-tum, 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 ta-ta-ta-tum,
I'm going to
ta-ta-ta-pum.
stop you immediately, Lorenzo. You're doing that metronomically. And he says, rush the little triplet. He wants you to rush. So, ya-pa-pa-pa, da-pa-pa-pa, really fast. And so the way I think he feels it, he doesn't feel it like this. He feels it, whoa, pa-pa-pa-pa. You know the Eroica Symphony?
Yeah.
It's a funereal gesture. It's solitary trumpet, 2,000 dead soldiers on the battlefield. There's only one bugler left, this boy, and he goes, pa 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 pa. So I wouldn't conduct beats. I would conduct gestures. So if you can just look, if it wants more, pa 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 pa. And when you come down, the trumpeter will play just before the downbeat, but he'll do it himself.
Yeah, I saw that in the masterclass.
Yeah.
I'll try it. Ta-ka-ta-tum, ta-ka-ta-tum, ta-ta-ta-tum.
Do it this time without saying it. Just hear it.
Yeah.
And listen for the trumpet. Don't make the sound. So you do it. And there are threes. You know, things are always built in threes. So this is build it on, build it on, build it on. Because of the sforzando, the third one is different.
I'll try that.
Good. It's great. It's great. At the moment, it's a concerto for conductor rather than a solo for trumpet. So you have to find a way of making him play or her the way that you want them to play, rather than this, because that's going to make him go away. So it has to be an invitation, not a domination. Do you understand the difference?
Yeah. And that's I feel that's the tricky thing about actually conducting this, because you cannot overdo it. It's just
the secret of conducting is that the players are the ones who play the music. Right. That's the secret. The conductor is silent and has power because he can actually, and when I say he, I mean equally well she. That's obvious. The conductor can give power away, and if the player plays it, then you've got an ideal relationship. If you dominate the conductor by doing too much, then the players, what they do is they emotionally take themselves away if you do that. So I would say be very centered, very severe, and everything in this piece collapses. The first movement is all about collapses. Mm-hmm. So every time something happens, it collapses. So that third time, the sforzando collapses. So if you can give that feeling, so you've created already an atmosphere, a funereal atmosphere, seriousness, devotional. It's a funeral.
Yeah. Okay, can I try that from the beginning one more time?
Please do. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, I still think also even this, this big breath, let him breathe. You don't have to breathe like that. I mean, you have to breathe, otherwise you don't need to let anybody know.
Yeah.
And you see, there's no question who's in charge of the music, but you're not saying, I'm in charge. Right?
Follow me.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
The biggest thing that a conductor can do is respect the players. That's the biggest thing. If you can really get in your heart that the players are the ones who are playing, and your job is to give them all the space and the power and the beauty that
Inspiration.
and never dominate them. All right, try again.
Yeah.
So very,
Okay.
very severe. Collapse. Now, can I just say a word there? That note, don't let that note collapse.
Oh.
In other words, when you do, I mean, it's diminuendo. T now. Pim, pim, pam, pam. Would you do the third one?
Yeah.
Now. Good, Lorenzo. Good. It's coming very well. Could you do? Could you think of this as four bars in one? Can you think of that all as one with two impulses? And that world-weary quality which every Jewish person is brought up on hearing and feeling. And it's so interesting about these composers because they come from where they come. They come from their roots, right?
Yeah.
And so for them to do with the shoulder, with the head, the whole gesture of it's wailing, it's crying, it's despairing, it's those whole things. Could you just try, just say the bass drum to me, speak the bass drum.
Before the 2 bars before, right?
Yeah. Boom,
Okay.
boom.
Boom, boom, ta-dum.
Yeah, but you see, you're doing, listen, you're doing da, 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 da.
Ta-ta, right.
It couldn't be
Right.
less Jewish. Now let me show you how that sounds in Jewish, right? Boom, boom. You see where that eighth note? Boom, 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 boom. It's not da da, but so boom, 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 boom. And they may not get it. Even the great orchestras, because they're boom, boom, ba bum, but
Yeah.
boom, boom, ba boom. Just try that.
Okay.
And say it, and while you're saying it, conduct it, so that your hands will do what your voice is doing.
Boom, 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 boom.
Oh, no, wait.
It's still two.
You're crescendoing. It's the opposite. Boom, boom,
Boom,
boom, boom. Look at the weight. Boom, 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 boom. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. Isn't that
Pom,
interesting?
tut.
It's
It's
a language.
difficult.
If
Yeah.
you were in a language school and they were teaching you to speak French without an accent, they'd go on until you got it right.
Yeah.
They'd say, yeah. So it's a language. But what I'm constantly saying to people is, music is a language. It has a grammar. It has a style. It has all the elements that a language has, and an accent and everything else. And our aim in life is to get as close to that accent as we possibly can. And it may be, one very clever person that I read once said, we actually only have one language we can speak, one composer.
Yeah.
He was a musician and a psychologist, and he said, everybody has one. If that's the case, my language is Mahler.
Yeah.
But I like to think that I have a little relationship with Brahms and Benjamin. But so forgive me for being
No, absolutely. It's absolutely. It's
about it. But
it's one of those things that it's either right or wrong. There's
right,
no middle ground, right?
exactly.
I'll keep trying.
I think you're doing beautifully, and you're one thing that I will say is wonderful about you. You're open-hearted, you're warm, enthusiastic, friendly, and lovable. All right, that's a huge thing to bring to an orchestra, because they love enthusiasm, they love inquiry, they love to engage, and so you don't have a dominating bone in your body, which is wonderful, and you're a beautiful personality. And I think, and you're also very young, most people don't start, in the old days, people didn't start conducting until because they played instruments, and they, like Toscanini, you know what happened to Toscanini? He was playing cello in an orchestra, and they were touring actually in your country. I think they were in Argentina, and suddenly Aida, the first conductor, was sick, the second conductor was sick. They said, Arturo, you conduct. No, I can't conduct. Yes, Arturo, you have to. Nobody, all right. He conducted Aida from memory. But people didn't go to conducting school in those days. There were no conducting schools, didn't exist. They grew up as musicians, pianists, coaches, violinists,
Musicians.
and then they went on the podium, as I did when I said to the woman, I was very experienced. I was, not that in front of an orchestra, but being a coach, using my hands to express the music. Like that. So think of your hands as being part of your expressive language, which comes from inside.
Okay.
All right. So I mean, we could go on and on and
Oh.
on, hours and hours and hours together, and I would love that, because you're very open. You desire to learn this thing.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's a world. It's a hugely complex and beautiful, and we're all drawn to it, like bees to the honey, like moths to the flame. And it's the struggle that exists around Mahler is fascinating, because people get very intense about it. The board of my orchestra, they were so angry at this music, and it has taken a long time for it to take hold in the general consciousness, but that's happened now.
Yeah.
And, when I go to an orchestra like the Philharmonia, they know all these things because they've played it so much. They know, as I tell you. Anyway, it's great to work with you. It's wonderful.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, it's such a joy. Are we about on time for what we're about? Great, wonderful. So now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do Mahler 2. And I want to do two things. One is I want to deal, first of all, with Martin moment because Martin is going to Vietnam to bring this piece for the first time. It's very they haven't. I've done this also in some towns. In Tulsa, I think it was, that I went and they'd never played and never heard Mahler. It's very exciting to do that, and bring your terrific enthusiasm and your excitement about showing them this heaven of places. I have one thing that I might recommend to you, which some people have done, is that I have, with each one of my Philharmonia recordings, I have an explanation disc a full-length disc in which I explain the music to the lay audience. And that's become very much appreciated by people who don't know. And what two or three conductors that I know have actually given that disc to every member of the orchestra. It's very easy to do now. You just send it through through email. And then they sit and listen, and the examples are all given by the Philharmonia Orchestra, which is good enough. So I would recommend that. And so I would suggest it's an enormous opportunity you have. It's wonderful to go to Vietnam and bring this piece for the first time. And then I find it's worth explaining things to them, telling them the stories, telling them what's going on, giving them the background, because Mahler was a biography. It was telling the story of the world in music, and so it will help them to do that. So do you want to just do the opening to see how you do that? You don't have to. I tell you why I bring it up, Martin, because one of the people yesterday asked, how do you do that opening? And it's, what does he mean when he writes that crescendo? So what I recommend you do is you do the first slashing note in the strings. This is an answer to this lady who said yesterday. So the first G is like a shudder. It's got to have a tremendous power and like a stab in the heart at the beginning of the piece. And then is at a different speed. He marks it specifically and has a long pause, and then and now like an eruption of lava from a volcano. So that's hard to do, and to have the courage to do that. But these are fast, ferocious, and fortissimo, with an accent on the first note, and the most sound the cellos and basses can make that is humanly possible, right? And then the next one, and now, and be sure that when you get to this is basic tempo. That funeral march. Would you like to try that just to see?
Yes, of course, Maestro.
Just try it.
You can see me well?
Yeah, perfect.
This is a little bit strange for me, but
yes, no, not for me at all. It's the strangest situation ever.
Okay.
Right, pretty good. It's pretty good. Let me just say two things about it. I don't want to spend a huge amount of time because you'll work on it. The first stroke has got to be so big that the bows of the players are like this. Like that, so that they make an enormous amount of sound. So you don't play a string instrument, right?
No.
And I can always tell whether somebody's a string player. Because if you're a string player, you'll go like this. Wah! Because that's what the strings have to do. You get that?
Yes.
So you have to make gestures that are suitable for the string. So, wah! Like that, something which makes them play like that. Okay? And then you step back and to the cellos and basses, depending on where they are, whether they're here or there, you go so that they play as fast as they can. Do it again from the beginning.
Yeah.
Good. What you'll need to do in order to make that work is one and bop. So 2, 3 bop, 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 because otherwise they won't know what to do. So 1, 2, 3 bop, 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 bim, bop, bop. And when the moment you've done the 3, you move quickly to the downbeat. But it was very good. I mean, you're on the way. On the way. That's great. That's great.
Thank you very much, Maestro.
It's a very exciting beginning. I mean, you're going to have them. I don't think there's anything a human being can do that's more exciting than preparing, learning, conducting, and performing Mahler 2. I think that's just about the pinnacle of life itself. So
yes, I can tell that.
So let's go to the second movement, because I have something very, very exciting to tell you about the second movement.
Perfect.
So Sam, my dear, dear, dear friend Sam Burston. Let me move now from you to Sam Burston, who's here, somewhere here. Sam, I just want to explain to your colleagues here. Sam was a violist in the Philharmonia all the time that I've been there conducting, and is one of my absolute closest and favorite musical friends. And he also was the violist in the quartet which I had for my conducting class, I think for 3 years. Is that right, Sam?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he played the viola. And what happened was, Sam, you started more and more taking a role as a coach of the young conductors, and they valued your opinion tremendously. And then gradually it just seemed right for you to start conducting. And you've made a real difference with the orchestra in London. And do you have an orchestra now in Slovenia?
No, I've only been here a couple of months, and it's been mostly locked down, unfortunately.
Yes, that's right.
But no, I absolutely loved being part of your classes, and I think because I studied conducting alongside the viola, and I had some great teachers like Peter Stark.
Yes.
And he is fantastic with the technical side, as well as being a great musician as well. But from him, I really think I picked up a lot of very useful things about technique, that sometimes when you were talking to students about the music, I could observe that perhaps there was something technical about how they were using their hands or their bodies or something that was actually hindering them. It's not that they weren't good musicians, but something technical might be getting in the way, and then I would put my hand up and offer an opinion.
And of course, the best people to respond to the conductor are the players, because the players are either served or not served by the conductor. And so that's why I've taken to putting a white sheet of paper on the stand of every musician in every orchestra that I conduct, and inviting them with absolute openness to comment about things that they notice, like you were saying in the classes, or things that they don't even agree. If they don't agree or don't understand something in the music, they're free to do that too. And that's opened up a two-way street that is rather unusual and very illuminating, certainly for me as the conductor. So that's great. So before, what I want to do Sam, is you probably remember, both the Sams remember, that when I came to record the second Mahler symphony, I did something very unusual. It may be unique, but it's certainly unusual. What I did was we recorded the first movement, and then when we came to the second movement, before the session, I had everybody sit in their chair, and I played them that recording of Cassadó playing the Chopin, which I played at the beginning of this class. And it was an amazing thing, because there were about 80 musicians in the hall, in the room, in Watford Town Hall, listening, as I thought, with considerable attention to something so mesmerizingly beautiful and so different from what one usually hears. And something really amazing happened after that, which is we went directly into recording the second movement, and it was almost instantaneously successful, with the kind of freedom and rubato that I love and believe that Mahler wanted. So what I'm going to do is, this is more like a conversation than a, it's certainly not a conducting lesson, it's a conversation between colleagues. I'm going to play you a recording of this opening. I don't actually know who's conducting it, doesn't really matter, but anyway, I just came across it. So Simon, would you play that opening of the second movement?
Yes, give me a second. Would you go directly from there to a recording, not the Philharmonia recording, but a recording that I did with the youth orchestra of the Boston Philharmonic? We were on tour, and we did this performance actually in Rotterdam on tour, and Simon and I were listening to it this morning. Before you do it, Simon, can you just play the opening of that recording again, the very opening, and then go into the other one?
Sure.
No, the one which you just played.
Yes.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, I'm so sorry.
One more time.
Yeah, I didn't hear it. I see. No, that. Yeah, I don't want the. Is that the? That's not the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's
wait.
I just wanted them to.
Yes, I know. I just got confused here with the window.
Ah, right.
How fascinating.
Yeah, how fascinating, exactly. Okay. Now, what you're hearing is each beat like this in 3, and almost every beat even like that. And I always think it sounds like somebody, a Dutch dancer in clogs, rather than the Viennese Ländler. Now do the other recording, the one from Rotterdam.
Good. That's the rubato style that I'm talking about, and it's a hard thing to do to get an orchestra to do. That's a kids orchestra, the youngest in that orchestra, 12 years old, but we work very hard at that style. I love that style, and it's become a very natural thing for that orchestra to play that way, including with the slides and the timing. What they're doing is taking time whenever there's something in the harmony that is special or surprising. But the basic tempo is actually moving quite fast, and much faster than, because it's really one in a bar. So the question is, Sam, what you feel about that, what you feel about orchestra. I mean, Samantha asked, how can you get a large orchestra to play freely? And the answer is, you have to insist, and I believe that you can do it. And I think what you just heard was a remarkable example of very, very free playing.
Yeah,
so tell me
absolutely.
a little bit about your thinking about it, what it's like to be in an orchestra when somebody comes along like me and says, okay, now I want you to play.
Well, of course, I mean, orchestras are made up of all different kinds of people, and different characters, and some people have open hearts and open minds, and they're willing to try anything, or almost anything. And others have been there for many years, and they're just watching the clock, and they're looking forward to going home to a nice hot cup of bovril or something. But no, I mean, clearly, I think what I love about you, Ben, is that pretty much every single thing that you say musically is completely convincing. And when you hear the orchestra, the Boston Philharmonic Youth Orchestra playing like that, not just with that freedom of rubato and expression, but also the quality of sound, the real pianos and pianissimos, which I think Philharmonia is particularly incredible at. It's just a joy to hear Mahler's music come to life like that. So, yeah, it's wonderful, and I think it's worth taking the time to explain your thoughts and to explain how you feel that Mahler should be sounding, because then when somebody hears that, I cannot understand how somebody would not be convinced by that.
Great.
And then so you take that, and then when I was very, very fortunate to conduct Mahler's second last year.
Oh, great.
I organised a very good friend of mine, a wonderful singer, suffered a stroke in January last year, about 18 months ago. And he's a dearly loved chap. He sings with the choir Tenebrae and Philharmonia Voices. And he's making a recovery now, which is great. But it was a very serious situation. And I thought, what better piece to try and bring hundreds of people together than Mahler's second. Also, of course, the resurrection. We were hoping that our friend would be literally back on his feet. And you were talking about how many rehearsals you need earlier. We had an entire Blackheath Hall in southeast London we hired for the day, and we rehearsed the orchestra, a scratch orchestra. We had some wonderful players like Neil Tarleton, the bass of the Philharmonia, and many other professionals, but also lots of amateurs and a few students. So a completely scratch orchestra on the day. And then many of Stephen's singing colleagues arrived at lunchtime, and we rehearsed all day, and then we performed it at 6 p.m. And yeah, I can agree with your statement earlier that preparing and performing and conducting Mahler second is most definitely the greatest thrill and rush and responsibility that I think I've ever had. So yeah, it was amazing. But I wouldn't want to do it in one day again, because you don't have that much time to try and get everybody to feel all the nuances of the rubato that I was hoping for. But they did a pretty good job.
So, Sam, now all of you who are listening know why I treasure this man as one of the dearest colleagues and admired friends. This is what a musician should be like, and with this kind of
dedication and devotion and love and passion for what he does, and that's a beautiful thing. When you find people like that in an orchestra, when you travel, it's one of the great joys. So Sam, let's say you wanted, and you had more time, and you wanted to bring this out. Let me tell you what I think has to happen in order to make it work. And this is something that is generally true. If you want the rubato style to work, the tempo has to be fast enough so that the pulling back works. And the thing that makes the youth orchestra performance of that so convincing, actually even more convincing than the performance that we did with the Philharmonia, not because the Philharmonia isn't one of the greatest orchestras in the world, but because Ben Zander wasn't quite on top of it on that day. It was good, but what it needs is enough movement here. So this is if you're looking for things to take time over, this is one. Tom, tom, ti, la 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 la. But this, la 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 dum, bum. So yum, pi, ya da 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 da, yum, bum. Ti, la 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 dum, bum. So by moving through those 16th notes, you can create the feeling of one beat for 2 bars. Would you like to try that? I mean, I don't know how much you want to get involved, but that the tempo is actually, and when you get to the middle section, that's a beautiful tempo for the whole movement. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ya la 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 dum, bum. Would you like to try that?
Sure. Yeah. So I gave just the 1 bar in.
Right.
Obviously, there are 2 bar phrases, but I thought for clarity, I didn't want to confuse.
Yeah, right. You're absolutely right. I wouldn't give 2 bars. I would think 2 bars. And what I would think is a ritardando in those 2 bars. So it's da 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 tum. So that it's there for you to go back into. It's like when you're driving and you put the foot on the brake and then it goes back into cruise control. Right? So the tempo is that, you establish that, then make a ritardando for the upbeat and then move. Should we try that? Good. It's beautiful. So, Sam, I don't think you can take time on one note. If you're going to take time at the end of the bar, so rather than da-dum, bum, you can do it on the first beat because you've had the ritardando. But what you did just then was you can't take that much time. So let me just show you. So you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, pom, pi, la 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 la, yum, pom, ti, la 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 la, yum, pom, ti, ya da dee, da da dee, dum. Bum, ya dee dee da da dee bum. Try that. Good. Sam, it's great. It's great. It's great. Beautiful. Beautiful. It's really great. There's a tendency, or let me put it another way. If you were to give them not only the information, but also the love for the phrases,
I think you'd get it more naturally. And that brings up the whole question of whether there's some way you can create the feeling with your whole body and with your face as well. Because at the moment it looks too placid. So I would do, if you were doing that, so I would do. And so that you're giving, telling the story with your body, with your hands, with your face, with everything. Let's try it again. It's coming. And the main thing is to make sure you understand that the tempo, which I think is around 98, something like that, 98, 100, 98 like that, is 1, 2, 3. Now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 2, 3, 2, 3, so you're pulling on the elastic and everybody feels it together. Try it again. Yes. Great, terrific. Okay, so Sam, it's more, and it can be more still. It can be still more the feeling. It's a dance, and the players want to feel that sense of lilt and dance, and they're not quite feeling it yet. And I also find that upbeat a little artificial. I don't know how to do this, but now pianissimo. Sorry, that's what's so wonderful about the timing here. So if you can get that loving nature, that is tender. Let's try one more time.
Yeah, I think I'm feeling ever so slightly cramped by the headphones of the desk.
Yes, right. That's right.
But yes, yeah, of course, that's no excuse. Yeah. I'll try one more time. Okay.
That's like Casals. Every time he played a wrong note, he looked at his cello disapprovingly.
Yes, right. A bad conductor blames his desk, I suppose.
Yeah,
okay. Last time.
Okay. Just imagine.
Yeah.
Don't be embarrassed at all. Imagine that your orchestra doesn't know how to. Like when Martin goes to Vietnam, he's going to be with an orchestra that has no idea what this music is about. Imagine only through your gestures and through your tendency, your freedom, your expressiveness, with your everything you have, will the orchestra get that feeling without inhibition. Can I just stop you a moment? I think that's too much. that last upbeat is so long. It's almost like adding an extra beat. It's just stretching, only stretching.
Okay.
So la 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 yum bum ti la la la, not more than that.
Okay.
Yes. Great. Look, Sam, it's very awkward because the video is stopping, so I can't always tell what you're doing because it's the video. It's not you. It's the video. So I can't. But what I'm seeing is much more expressiveness. I always think that if you can imagine you're telling stories to 5-year-olds,
Yeah.
when you're with that kind of energy and investment, you desire for them to hear what you have to say and what the story is. I think that's the secret of the what next will be of value to you in your conducting. And I can't wait for you to get back into conducting so that you can try all these things. And one of these days I want to be there so that I can see it. And
that would be wonderful.
you've made such a huge contribution to my life through the viola and through your friendship and through the things that we've done together. It's been absolutely fantastic. It's just a joy to see you here.
You too, Ben. Thank
Absolutely
you.
wonderful.
May I just, while we're on this, just make an observation on the score? At least I have the, it's just by complete chance, one of these Ben Zander Art of Possibility things that I have the only score I have with me in Slovenia right now is Mahler's second.
Right.
I'd love to just mention the printed bowing.
Yes.
The bowing at the beginning of this second movement, and I think that the basic bar to a bow thing that is suggested is very convincing, especially if the rubato is being done in this way.
Exactly.
So often, if it's done in a slower tempo, you often have up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. You know, just to get it all square or triangular.
A square three.
But the exactly. But the up, gives it this natural bounce with the bow, which matches, or I think helps playing in the way that I think that you're envisaging it.
Right, exactly right, exactly, and the grazioso comes out much better in that way. Beautiful.
Exactly, yeah.
Thank you so much, Sam. It's such a joy.
Thank you.
Let's go on. We've got the Adagietto, and I wrote down who it was. Here it is. It is Natalie Salinas. Is that right, Salinas?
Yes, I'm here, Maestro.
Very
glad to meet you.
Yeah, where are you?
Here I am. Can you see me now?
Yes, now I see you.
Here.
Natalie, you're also from Argentina, is that right?
Yes. Actually, with Lorenzo, we are very close friends and colleagues.
Really? That's wonderful.
Yes.
So now you had made an inquiry into the Adagietto, and I think this would be perfect way for the last half an hour so that we have to explore this issue. And I believe you even asked a question about how does one make the Adagietto work? And it's if I can just for a few moments with the group and with you step back and tell you what happened with the Adagietto. And the earliest recording that we have of this piece
was with Mengelberg conducting the Concertgebouw. I do know that recording by any chance. Have you heard it?
No, but
No. Well, you're going to have a
no.
revelation now. Okay, there's going to be a real revelation. Simon is going to play. This is Mengelberg playing, and let me just say a word so everybody knows who Mengelberg was. He was the conductor of the Concertgebouw in Amsterdam. He never left. He just rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed, so he could play with them incredibly freely, with a kind of freedom that you almost couldn't achieve unless you were the resident conductor there working all the time. And he was a great friend of Mahler. There's a famous concert which took place in the Concertgebouw. First half of the concert was Mahler, Fourth Symphony, conducted by Mengelberg. The second half of the concert was the Mahler Fourth Symphony, conducted by Mahler. Imagine that concert. I would have given everything to have a ticket for that concert. Anyway, Mengelberg knew Mahler very, very well, of course, and they made music together. And so when he came to do the Fifth Symphony, he did the piece at least as close to what Mahler must have had in mind as possible. And he did it in 7 minutes, and I think it's 7 minutes 56 seconds, something like that. We can't hear the whole thing. It's on YouTube. It's worth listening. Simon, let's just hear the opening.
Right. So just so you know, Maestro, 50% of our class have listened to that recording before.
Oh, fantastic. But you didn't send it out. We didn't send it out. This is
No, I didn't, but I just made a poll and they said that.
Fantastic. But 47 didn't, so let's listen to them. Fine. Now, that is so different from the way it used to be played when we were all growing up. And when I got to know that piece, it was a funeral piece, played as slowly as possible. In one recording, a Herman Scherchen's recording, I believe, not 7 minutes and 56 seconds, but 15 minutes. Literally twice as slow. And, you know, in Death in Venice, it was used as a theme music for Death, and Bernstein played it at Robert Kennedy's funeral. It got slower and slower and slower and slower, and the harp part became weighed down. And when I came to record it with the Philharmonia, the harp player, who's great, had never even thought of it this way, and played it with each note so slow like that. And so I had to actually go in a separate session to teach how this music should be played, which is essentially as a piano accompaniment. Now, what Mengelberg told us through his note in the score, that this was a love song. It wasn't a death song at all. And it was a piece that Mahler composed for his beloved Alma, who he was about to marry, and it was like sending a love letter. And apparently she read it and immediately understood the message and went to see him as a result, because they communicated in music. So it's a completely different feeling. And the secret of this music is that the piano accompaniment, and I call it the piano accompaniment on purpose, like we were just talking with the second movement of the second symphony, is that when there's nothing happening in the music, to stop it, it flows. Just if it was just flowing like this, flowing, flowing, flowing. And now comes and that, because it's so special, so poignant, so full of tenderness and love, that or Seelenvoll, as he says, full of, so that is where the time is taken. And then it releases. It's like you're pulling it like that, and then you release. Now, if any harmony needed time, and now you can even move it. Now listen to this. That must flow and flow, because there's nothing staying in the way. So here's the secret of this style. The basic tempo is moving. And when something happens in the music like this, you pull the elastic, and then let it go. And when you let it go, it flows back into tempo. Secret is to have the right tempo to begin. Now the question is, why did he write sehr langsam? Why did he write very slow? And my answer to you is, he wrote very slow because he wasn't thinking about the eighth notes. He was thinking about love. And he was thinking, I love you, darling. Don't ever leave me. It's what I love, darling. And if you're thinking in one and a bar, it's a very slow one. Do you get that? This is a revelation that music is not to be felt in small notes, it's to be felt in large notes. And what he meant was, this is one in a bar. And if it's one in a bar, and it so clearly is, because da, 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 that's one gesture, and now here's another one, da, dee, da, dee. Now here's the twos, da, dee. So now the question is, can you make that happen with your hands?
Yes, let's try.
You like to try?
I also like to think about this Adagietto like a contrast of the funeral march in the beginning, because in this moment he was waiting for his first child. So he was thinking also about life in this moment. So I'm very interested in the mood of.
So let's see whether we can make it happen. Now, the crucial thing, just like we talked with Sam Burston, the tempo that you find has to be, quotes, fast. I wish it wasn't the word fast, because the word fast is not appropriate here. It's flowing. We should invent a new word. Actually, there's the Australian, South African musicologists called it lond. Instead of fast, lond. So, choom, going through. So find a tempo which is moving enough so that you can feel it one in a bar. Should we try that?
Okay. Yes.
Start at the beginning. Amanda. Now I have to tell you, I'm having a problem, which is the screen keeps stopping. Amanda, let me just see if I can, because your hands keep stopping in the screen.
Oh.
And therefore it's very hard for me to read you. And I just want, Amanda,
yes.
What's happening is her hands keep stopping, so it seems freezing.
It could be the signal on her end.
Perhaps connection, Wi-Fi connection.
Are you in Argentina?
Yeah.
Are you in Argentina? That explains it. You're too far away.
It's a not very good connection here.
I'll tell you two things that I noticed. You understand the music. That's the first thing. You understand it. And you also are doing it in 4, which is great. And that's already a breakthrough, because mostly people do it in every 8th note and it falls into pieces that way. So that's great. So let's do it again and see if we can make it happen without your hands, because what I'm seeing is the hands going like this, which is not what you're doing.
Okay.
So,
okay. I will try to continue reinforcing this with with singing to hear the musical ideas.
So
at least.
Now do from the beginning, and if you can get the beginning very, very quiet. Look, the violas, half the violas are going to come in. They don't need more than this. Look there. That's it. That's the beauty of violas. You can just do that. You can't do that to an oboe. But in a viola, and I would put right at the end of your hands, put your hands out right at the end, and then just go like this, the softest sound. 2, and then 3, 4, da, wa, da, to, di, da, to, ti, da, di. Now, when you get to the 3rd beat, wa, da, da, ti, da, da, 3, don't come in until you want them to come in themselves, because 1, 2, 3, ta, di, ta. Right, let's try that.
Okay.
Yeah. Can I just say one thing? Even softer.
Yes.
The violas are going to come at the tip of the bow, right? It's going to be out of nothing, right? You don't know that it's going to sound. So the biggest sound you make there is this. That's all you need for your viola.
Okay.
Right. So very, very soft.
Once and again.
Yeah.
Dum, di, dum. Do, di, do, di, do. Do, di, do, di, do, di, don, di. Do, di, don, di.
Beautiful, beautiful, great. It's gorgeous, good. You're a very natural musician, and it's very easy to follow you because you feel the music and your hands do natural things. Now I think you can make it more amazing, more intense, more Mahlerian. It's a little bit like something comfortable, and nothing in Mahler is comfortable in the sense of being easy. So this opening, the beginning was very good. Finish. Now new. So much weight of emotion and feeling and depth and so on, and your body doesn't quite tell that story yet. You haven't suffered enough, my dear.
Yes.
Because, you know, when it's a love song to Alma, but there was always that feeling he desperately wanted her, but he was much older than her, and she was spectacularly beautiful and vivacious and youthful, and he always feared that he would lose her. I'm not saying this is psychological in that sense. I'm saying, like all of Mahler, it's full of these incredibly deep feelings. So, and you won't get that kind of playing from Sam Burston and there's other musicians if you just. I don't want to insult, because you're a beautiful musician and you're a very natural musician, but I don't feel that the players will get a sense that something very special is happening. I mean, this is the most single popular and loved moment in all of Mahler, isn't it? So could we try it again? And
Yes, of course.
create the atmosphere of... Do you have a feeling before you start that you're just about to embark on one of the most beautiful things ever created by a human being?
Yes, always happens to me that before this kind of music, I cannot hear anything else for a while.
What did you say? That what happens? Did you?
That in general, the Mahler's music and this Adagietto, after hearing this music, is like I cannot hear another music for a while.
Right. Good. Okay, put it in your body.
Okay, I go.
Yeah. One of the problems is you're not making the crescendo. If you made the crescendo, that feeling of pulling. Good, much better.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Now,
I go again.
Imagine it's the last time you'll ever do it, right? The last time, and then you'll be run over by a bus, and you know that'll be the end. But this one last time you're going to do it, fantastic.
I go.
See, that's what it is. Yes. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. It's quite different. Natalie, it's quite different what you're doing now. And I have to tell you something very funny and sad, which is Amanda just told me that this computer is not charging, and so it's running out of battery, which is why you're starting and stopping. So that's what the problem. We found the problem. How fascinating.
Okay.
So, but I'm very, very glad, because it doesn't matter. We saw you do exactly what was needed. It was beautiful. And if you can go down that path as a conductor, as a deeply expressive, passionate, engaged, communicative conductor, you're going to make something very special, because you feel music very deeply. So I'm really happy. I think everybody who saw that would say, yes, that's what you did. And you got the rubato, and we heard the harmonies in between there. It was very beautiful, really. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Maestro. It's very inspiring to work with you.
Great
also
pleasure.
because of you.
Great pleasure.
Thank you very much.
All of you. And I'm sorry I'm going to run out of gas in a minute. We apologize. The machine has broken down. But you know, this was lovely. I mean, Mahler would have been amazed if he thought that his music could be discussed without a single note being played. But somehow it's so expressive and so communicative an art that we can actually have a conversation about it. It's really beautiful. Thank you all. Thank you, Sam, for arranging it. Beautiful. So I think we're about to run out, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Well,
Does anybody, until we do, does anybody have anything? We think you have a few minutes. Yeah. Does anybody have something they would like to share or ask or say or comment? Amit. But he's not there.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, you are? Great. What do you... Ah, there you are. Great. You're over, you look as though... Anything you have to observe or comment or suggest or ask?
Well, I'm just, full of inspiration.
Oh,
it's amazing. I don't know if you know, but I have a company, and the company is called Rubato.
Oh, fantastic!
and many people ask me what's the purpose, what's the idea behind the name Rubato for a company, and I think I can now give them the perfect explanation I ever have.
Right,
So thank you for this.
Deep feeling and expressiveness, and also freedom. I mean, it's about freedom. And I'm absolutely certain we know enough about Mahler as a performer, both what people have said and also his own recordings on piano roll. We know that he loved freedom. I mean, that was his natural way. Apparently, he walked so quickly that in order to keep up with him, somebody had to run because he walked so quickly. He had such an energy, tremendous energy, and he was a fantastic swimmer and
climber in mountains, and I mean, he was a fantastic athlete as well as one of the most emotionally rich and available people that anybody had ever met. So we have to take that on in order to be up for his music and ready for his music. Beautiful. Well, good luck to Rubato. I'll invest in it.
Oh, thank you so much, Maestro.
Ben?
Yes, Samantha.
Hello, hello. It's wonderful to be here again. I've just got two.
Wonderful to have you here.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been through so many Mahler symphonies together.
We have, and enjoyed them all. I love Mahler. I just wanted to ask you, in terms of this emotional polyphony that you talk about, you know, when, especially now, because I'm conducting now these days and got away from that second violin part, it becomes more obvious to me that the number of differences between sections and in an orchestra, we're all very much trying to be the same as each other. So if, as you said, somebody's doing a crescendo somewhere and others are diminuendoing, etc., etc. And so I've been looking at the scores and wondering how the hell I will get a narrative for all of this, because I think a narrative, would you agree that a narrative is what is needed for all these kind of thoughts and experiences that are on those pages that are all going on concurrently? And in that sense, is it a bit like conducting opera? I mean, I haven't conducted it, but is it a bit like conducting an opera with the flexibility to change the narrative?
Yes, I mean, what has to happen, the framework has to be set for each individual voice to act as a soloist. And once the permission is given, I know you probably remember, I've said this so many times at the Philharmonic rehearsals, and which is, be an individualist, don't conform. If somebody else is doing another dynamic, don't say, oh, everybody's supposed to be doing mezzo forte, which is what we do in other music. But in this music, you ignore the people around you. The conductor cannot conduct it all. He can only set a framework for each individual section and player to feel that freedom, that delicious sense that you have an individual voice. I remember I got a white sheet once from the fourth flute in Mahler Sixth. And the fourth flute said, I feel like the most important person on the stage.
Fantastic.
And that's the secret of Mahler. That when the individual players feel as though they're taking responsibility, and then the section leaders also become tremendously important in the strings. And that's a huge part. And then the conductor has to listen. One person asked, how do you learn all of this from memory? And I frankly don't, because like Klemperer was asked, why don't you conduct from memory? And he said with his mouth on one side, because I can read music. I mean, I think the score is to be read and is to be brought to life each time differently, not from memory, but by heart. In other words, from the heart. But reacting to what's there. And I think that if we set the right context for it, we can enable the orchestra to feel free to be individual and to take responsibility, to be leaders. That's what I love about that orchestra. And I train my youth orchestra the same way, to be leaders. It doesn't matter which chair you're sitting in, you're still the leader.
I must say that having sort of taken up conducting, it was a big shock to me how different it is, how different it seems, and how you know, on the other side.
Yes.
I mean, we could spend a whole evening discussing that, but it seems to me that, you know, orchestras, they gravitate towards copying each other. Nobody wants to stick out as an individual. This is the nature of a section of an orchestra, and then, you know, when I look at the scores, and to some extent I agree with you about rubato and freedom. In many ways, I wish more of the repertoire was performed in a free way. I wouldn't go as far back as to say Beethoven. You know, we discussed this in a previous class, but a lot of the freedom of expression in a big symphony orchestra has been lost, in my view, over the last 30 years. And so I really appreciate your freedom in this way. Ben?
Okay, so his computer ran out of battery.
Okay.
But let's see if we can get him, because I know there were still a few people that wanted to make comments. And I think it was a very, very special session today. So it would be nice to have him back and finish it properly.
Okay. If we don't, thank him, please, for me.
Absolutely. And well, maybe we can just leave some comments here, because he can watch the recording and tell him if you want to say something to him.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, I think he's heard what I have to say. Let the others go now.
Great. Thank you, Samantha.
Just Simone, to you and Maestro, thank you very much for a wonderful opportunity.
Yes, thank you very much for organizing this again and again.
Thank you, Simon.
Well, thank you. Okay, he's back.
Thank you.
But thank you all for making this possible. I'm very happy that he's available to all of us.
Thank you. I left a message ages ago on the thing, but maybe everything was dying at that point. Maybe. So I left the message, but there's no rush about getting
back. Great.
He's back. Welcome back.
How fascinating.
How fascinating. Let me explain about how fascinating, everybody. When you make a mistake, the correct response is how fascinating. Because it lifts the spirit. And if you're teachers, any of you, make sure you use that with your students, because they'll love it. And all my students understand if they make a mistake, instead of getting upset and pulling down and getting anxious and therefore more likely to make another mistake, they just go, how fascinating. And I was giving a concert once with 2,000 people in the audience, and one of the trumpets made a big mistake, and he went more in the concert. But anyway, so how fascinating. So what did I miss here?
Maestro, I have a question.
Yeah, where are you?
Susanna, it's a picture. First of all, I owe an apology because I don't have a video camera. That is why you have only my picture at this point. First of all, I want to say that I'm extremely honored to be present in such a workshop. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your knowledge. I mean, lots of gratitude. I have a pretty technical question. I want to take you back to the second symphony, to the Ländler.
Yeah.
The purpose for the prep beats, showing the orchestra, in this case, beat 2 and 3, is basically to set up the tempo, to show the players what the tempo is going to be like, right? But if we take beat 2 slower and beat 3 in rubato, and then on beat 1, we start to speed up, I mean, aren't we going to confuse the players? Unless there are many rehearsals are involved and verbally they know what you're going to do. I mean, let's say you don't speak a language.
Susanna, let me tell you what I in fact do, and I think you're absolutely right to be concerned about this. What I do before I start conducting this, I make sure that the orchestra knows what the tempo is. I go like this, boom, boom, boom. And then I go, actually, I only do, and it's actually not difficult to get. Look, you be the orchestra for a moment, and I'll go like this, I do this, and then I go, and it wasn't difficult to get.
Yeah, because you gave them the pulsing before, and it's very clever.
Yeah, I give the pulse so they know the tempo. Yeah. And then I don't actually conduct any beats. I just do the last one.
Right.
So I think myself 1, 2, 3, 4. 6, and I call it 6 rather than 3 because it's 2 bar phrases.
Right. Let me ask you, if you were to conduct a professional, highly professional orchestra, let's say New York Philharmonic versus youth orchestra with much less experienced players, would you still be pulsing for New York Philharmonic?
Would I be still what?
Pulsing, showing this inner pulse.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, because they need to know that. They need to know, because there's no way for the normal tempo for this movement is yum, ba, da, 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 and then unless you warn them, there's no way for them to know what the tempo is going to be.
Absolutely.
And so I would definitely, and particularly when I'm doing, for instance, in Beethoven, where I'm doing such different tempi than they used to, you absolutely have to warn them. And of course, you do that in a rehearsal so that they get used to it. They're not sight reading in the concert. But absolutely give all the information to the orchestra that they need in order to make sense of what's happening without embarrassment. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
And I don't make much difference between conducting a youth orchestra and conducting the Philharmonia. I've never conducted New York Philharmonic, but the Philharmonia, they'll tell you I'm just as ridiculous with them as I am with my youth orchestra. Because actually having a sense of fun and sense of playfulness and bringing one's enthusiasm for life and for music to the rehearsal, not a bad idea, actually.
I absolutely agree with you. My question is,
were
you ever been accused of treating a professional orchestra like high schoolers?
No, I did once, very funny, with the Israel Philharmonic. I conducted them 3 times, and on one moment, I can't remember which rehearsal, but I remember exactly where it was. It was in the second movement of Mahler 5. And I stopped, and they were playing, like this. It was just, everybody was playing flat out like that. And I stopped and I said, I'm going to pay you the highest compliment I can pay you, which is you're a world-class orchestra and you play like a youth orchestra. And that was a high compliment. What I mean by that is this. Every musician who's in the music profession at one point was in a youth orchestra, and he gave his heart and soul to his playing, and he got so excited about it that he decided that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. And then he went into music and went into an orchestra, and that fire and that joy and that love didn't get maintained, and in fact sometimes they get quite cynical. And what I say about a cynical person is that a cynical person is a passionate person who doesn't want to be disappointed again. You understand that? So that they've gone through so many experiences of disappointment, of not having the experience that they hoped and wanted, that they've come up with a conversation which says, I'm cynical. They're not cynical at all. You just go right round the back and speak to the passion, and it's right there. Because they wouldn't have gone into music for the money. They went into music because they loved music. So if you speak to their love and get absolutely in touch with that which brought them into music. And something that I hear many, many times from people, hundreds of times I've heard, thank you for reminding me why I went into music. I've heard that so many times. Thank you for reminding me why I went into music. And that's
well, it takes a lot of courage and a special gift that you definitely have.
Yes. Conviction
and passion also. I must say that it's a totally different game when you're working with the community players that make money in other professions, and it's a lot of work, and you have to have lots of passion and conviction to make these people come every week for the rehearsals, not for the money, but because they learn something, because their heart is there.
You remember what their name is. They're called amateurs, right? They're lovers. They're the lovers of music. And so we should remember that to keep present the love of music all the time, in every rehearsal, every moment of every rehearsal. So crucial. If we start getting
job of work doing it, and even the look on our face of being as if we're doing a job and we have to get through it and as quickly as possible and get to the cafeteria or get home, that isn't helpful to the art of music. That's what I feel. Yeah. So now you know what I feel.
Thank you so much, Maestro. And God bless you.
God bless you so much.
Hello. I was trying to say something on chat, but nobody's seen it, or maybe it hasn't got through. It was about the accompaniment of the Adagietto in the fifth. I don't know whether you saw.
Anna,
that's correct.
I saw that question, and I thought I was answering it in this description that I just gave, that it's like a piano accompaniment with exactly the same, as if you were playing a Schumann piece, or a song of Schumann. That's exactly how to do it. And Mahler would have sat at the piano playing songs like that all the time. And he just translated into the harp because he didn't have a piano.
But my question was that should the players, we're talking about freedom and autonomy in playing, even though you are guiding the players and helping the phrasing, should they be asked to be aware of those, the clocking the difference between the triplets and the duplets, which are clearly quite strategically placed?
Right, absolutely. You don't leave the timing to the players at all. The timing has to be controlled by the conductor at every moment, because otherwise it's chaos. Otherwise everybody feels it differently. So I'm conscious as I'm conducting those rhythms. Every single moment, there's a triplet, there's a duplet, there's a dissonance, there's a quarter note held. Everything has to be controlled from here, otherwise. But what you do give them is the freedom of the way in which they fit into the whole, which may be. I mean, this is a very special role because it's a accompaniment role. They're accompanying the singer. And the singer is in the at least at the beginning in the violins, then in the cellos. So the harpist is encouraged to make a sound, which is an accompanying sound. But you have to control, the conductor has to control everything in the timing. Absolutely, nothing left to chance.
No, thank you.
I agree with you. I agree. The duplets and the triplets are very different, and often, of course, you have duplets against triplets.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's great. I mean, this is a complex 7 minutes of music. It's actually about 9 minutes of music when you finish it up. But what else? Let's see all these wonderful
things. May I ask something? Nicolina is here.
Yes. Great. Yes.
Well,
Nicolina. Yes, great. Yes.
Yeah. I would love to add also some compliments on Mahler's Fifth Symphony and Adagietto, because every time when I found your performance of it on YouTube, I definitely find so many happiness and joy just listening. So thank you so much for doing your own performance of it. My question would be about the way of structural form of conducting, because 4 years ago in Belgrade, I had opportunity to watch and listen Valery Gergiev doing this movement in a very specific way, like without any structural form, like being on 4 or being on 2. He was just doing it by the sense of music. So what would be maybe your suggestion for the option that we can find between rubato and the structural form?
Well, the question of whether I'm a great admirer of Gergiev, incidentally, and a great friend of his. I've become close friends with him now recently. He's a fantastic musician. And look, I don't think you can teach conducting. You've heard me say that. Every conductor will find his or her own way of shaping the music. The only reason I talked about doing it in 4 was because it makes sense of the shape of the phrase. But I could easily That's not traditional 4/4 conducting. That's making the shape which I feel the players are most likely to be able to use to create the beauty of the music that I hear. So I think there are an infinite number of ways of doing it, not one. And I don't think there's a quote, a right way. I think it's, and you'll do it differently each time also, because that's the beauty of it. With great players.
Yes, my second question would be if you would agree that this way of conducting, like more rubato or non-rubato, sometimes depends on which kind of orchestra and musical players we do have in front of us. And how many times did they perform?
I insist that every orchestra has to be a great orchestra, whatever level they
Definitely.
are. They have to. And so I don't settle for, I don't say, oh, well, we have to do it straight because you're not very good. No, I say, no, this is the way the music goes. And I get them so excited about it that eventually they get it.
Someone said it before, there is no bad orchestra, there is only bad conductor.
That's right.
That's what someone said before. Okay, so
I wouldn't go that far, but I would say that if there's a mistake in an orchestra, it's almost always the fault of the conductor. Almost always. So, and it's not a bad position for a conductor to be in, to take that position. So even if there's a bad note in a horn, you know how a horn will make a clam note. It's not bad idea for the conductor to say, I did that, because probably they did. You know, if they'd paid very close attention to that particular player at that moment, they wouldn't have made that mistake.
Thank you so much.
I think we've done enough, and it's been beautiful. Thank you all. Thank you, Simon. Thank you for the Alex. This fellow is 14 years old. Zara, are you 14 still or 15?
I'm actually 12.
Oh, you're 12. That's wonderful. 12 years old. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a 12-year-old conductor. He's very serious, and he comes up from New Jersey and comes to my classes in Boston, and fantastic. I didn't realize you were that young. You're amazing. Yeah, you're very, and your mother is amazing too.
So much.
Everybody,
thank you.
Everybody needs a mother like that. Wonderful. Great. What a pleasure. Thank you all. Great.
Thank you, Maestro.
Thank you, Maestro.
It's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. Always living with shining eyes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Ben. See you next time.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Yes, what a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.